Hey, Jacob Slaton here with another behind the shoot video. This time I wanted to look at a photo or a series of photos that I did for Sierra magazine a couple months ago. Sierra hired me to go out to this place called LM Wind Power here in Little Rock, where they make these giant windmill blades. These are the ones you see going down the interstate on the back of a flatbed truck. They're like 100 feet long. It's crazy, and this is where they make them. And so they wanted me to shoot this guy Lester Johnson, who you see in this photo, for this story. Lester's one of the team managers there at this plant where they make these windmill blades. So it was pretty cool. I went in there one day, and they were. I had to put on, a respirator and steel-toed boots and everything. It was really cool. It was a big, giant working factory. Anyway, I wanted to start with this. This is the final shot they used for the magazine on the interior spread. And there's Lester sitting on the end of this windmill blade. This is what they ended up using. But I wanted to show you guys a couple different shots from the shoot as well. This shot right here is very similar to another shot that I'll show you here in a second, and I'll go through two different shots here in this video just real quickly and kind of show you what I did with them. So let's get into it. So this is the one of the original shots that I did. This is very similar shot to very similar setup to this one here that they ended up using. For this one, he's actually standing inside the blade itself, and he's got his coveralls on and basically all the gear that he would normally have. So I just told him to kind of suit up like normal, and what he does is he takes this basically it's a headlamp on a stick, and goes around and just inspects these blades on the inside very carefully and makes notes about where things need to be polished or buffed off, because they basically have to be perfect. And of course, normally he has this respirator down, covering his face, but we obviously wanted to see his face. So for this shot, I had a big octabox high and up to camera right. You can kind of see the highlight in his safety glasses here. That octabox, I think, is like 4 feet across. I can't remember exactly. And I had a grid on that just to keep the light. Just to keep the light from hitting the background too much back into here. That was my main light, and then I also had a fill light, which was kind of up here behind and to the back, and it was just a bare bulb with a reflector on it, just shining right over here at his shoulder to give him some separation. Although since he's wearing white in this shot, it really didn't make a whole lot of difference. It lit up the back of his respirator right here, but that's pretty much all it did. And it also lit up the ground right here behind him in kind of an even way. So that light was kind of take it or leave it, but I wanted to set it up anyway because I knew he wasn't going to be wearing this these coveralls the whole time, and he had a black shirt under that. Both of these lights are Alien B's B1600 lights. Those are kind of my go-to lights. And again, I shot this with a Canon 6D, as I do most everything these days. I was shooting with my 70-200 lens, and I was just zoomed in at 78 millimeters. ISO was 100, and my aperture was 2.8. The reason I had a really low aperture number on this one was I really wanted the shot to focus in on him, on his face, and I wanted to try to let the rest of the background go into blur. And also because they didn't want me to show too much of this background. This is kind of proprietary stuff back here, and so we agreed that I would blur the background as much as possible, and I think I ended up blurring it a little bit more in post. And so with that lower light, with that lower aperture setting, I had to drop my strobe lights down basically as low as possible. I'm sure I was shooting on on their lowest power setting, because when you're shooting strobes, your aperture is what gives you your flash exposure. So lower aperture number means lots more light comes in to the frame, and so if you want to shoot at a low aperture like this, you're going to have a really low flash power, or else the flash is going to be too bright on the subject. So that's why most of my shots where I'm shooting with strobes are going to be up in the 4.5 to 5.6 range on the aperture, simply because I'm going to typically have a higher flash setting. And most often I don't really care too much about blurring the background. But in this case I thought it worked out well. Again, I always shoot on auto white balance, almost always, not always, but you know, when there's something white in the frame, I know I can get a good gray in here somewhere. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to zoom in here. In order to get the proper white balance, you can either shoot a gray card, or you can just find a gray in the shot. And so I knew that this coveralls was a perfect white. And so there's all these different gradients of gray in here. So when I pull this shot into Lightroom, what I'll do is I'll pull up my white balance picker tool, which is I think it's W. When you hit the letter W, that'll pop up, and it's like an eyedropper tool, and you just go around and click. Of course, we're not in Lightroom now, but you go around and click into the gray areas, and then you watch how it changes your white balance setting. So it'll adjust for whatever the gray is that you're clicking. Sometimes if you click a area that's too white, too bright, it'll say this area is too bright, choose something darker. So I just kind of click around and I watch how it changes the frame, and I'll click around until I see something that I like, and then I'll call it done, basically. So you get the same effect with a gray card, but this is kind of the shortcut way to do it. So again, if there's something white in the frame that you know is white, you can use that for gray. If it's kind of off-white, you know, it's kind of risky. But anyway, that's what I do with that. And of course, this generally only works when you're shooting RAW. If you're shooting in JPEG, you're really not going to be able to change the color tones nearly as much as you can in RAW. When you're shooting RAW, you can change it all the way one way or the other. It's super easy. So I'll zoom back out. So that's how I chose the white balance here. And again, this is the RAW shot. So there's no editing on this. This is straight out of camera. And then so let's take a look at the final image. So I obviously zoomed in a little bit, or cropped in. There's the original again. There's the final. One thing that's pretty noticeable here is when you look at his headlamp or his flashlight, I really wanted that to show up more, so I kind of did a little bit of trickery here. I went into Lightroom and I grabbed the brush tool, and I set it on a lightning. I increased the exposure on just the brush tool, and I feathered the edges quite a bit around and made it sort of a big circle. I don't know, this was probably the original diameter of the adjustment of the brush, and then it had a feathering thing about to here. And then I raised the temperature on the yellow side to make it more yellow. So it looks like that thing is really bright and kind of shining right in your face. And I allowed that adjustment to hit his cheek a little bit, so it would look like the light is hitting his cheek, as it would naturally if it was actually that bright. So I thought that was kind of cool. It's just a little trick that I did. So there's the original again. Not really that impressive of a light. When I do that, it really brightens it up and it makes it look really interesting, I think. Also, just brought the color tones up on the yellow side for the whole image. Not necessarily because that's what my white balance setting gave me, but just simply because I thought it looked right. I like a warm toned image, especially in a magazine. I think it just looks well. So that's what I did there. I'll zoom in here and kind of look around. So there you can see the that adjustment I did on the light. I think it looks pretty natural, really. If you didn't know I did that, you probably would never even think about it. I came in here in Lightroom again and just brightened his teeth up a little bit, sharpened a little bit around here, but really we wanted this shot to look pretty raw, so I didn't really do a whole lot to it. I don't think I did hardly anything else on this particular shot. I may have brought in a little vignette. No, I don't think I did on this one. So anyway, there's the final again. I think it looks great. He gave me a great expression. He was a real happy guy. He was really easy to work with. So this is one of the shots that I really liked that you will see on my website at jacobslaton.com. I think it worked out really good. So that's pretty much it on that one. Again, high octabank on the right, and then I had that rim light on the back to the right as well. Most of the time when I'm shooting two lights like this, where I have a rim light or a separation light, I'll generally put those both on the same side of the image because I think that looks more natural. It makes it look like it's all coming from one giant light source, you know, on one side or the other of the image. If I was to put a rim light over here, I don't think it would look as natural, but I have done that before, and I'll do it again. But most of the time, I'm going to put them on the same side of the image. I don't know, maybe that's just my preference, but anyway, there's that shot. So here's another one that I did for the same shoot. This is in another part of the factory where they're actually so the one we just looked at where Lester was standing inside the blade, that was half a blade, and this is after they put the blade together, and it's a big, you know, it's actually complete. So at that point, these guys go inside and sand it, buff it down, make it perfect and everything. So there's all this fiberglass dust flying around, which is flammable. So that was kind of an issue because the guy that was with me he was my minder for the whole time that I was there. He wouldn't let me get too close with my flashes because he wasn't sure if they were, you know, OSHA approved or whatever it was. I don't know if they are or not, but anyway, my original plan was to actually climb inside there with these guys, but they wouldn't let me do that. So I just had them, all three of them, and they were. This is Lester in the front. The other guys were actually working in here, and I had them stop for a second and just to do a few photos. But there was like 2 or 3 more guys deeper inside this thing, and all this dust right here is natural. That's really flying around. They have these sanding tools, and so basically for this shot, I had my octabank up high again, and for this shot it was right over my head, and this blade is actually on a raised platform. So I was actually standing on a step ladder, and then the light was up over my head, so that thing was extended almost all the way. It was probably out to 10 or 11 feet, and it was just kind of right above my head, and that was really the only way that I could light up these guys in the back, was to use that light kind of on this main axis. So this is the raw shot right out of camera. I basically just wanted them all to stand there and kind of look like they were working hard, which is exactly what they were doing, and I really wanted to get their headlights pointed at me, just to kind of have an extra effect. They almost look like aliens. This shot reminded me of the scene from E.T. when the astronauts are like climbing up the back of the chute that's going into the back of the van, and the guys are stealing the van. So that was kind of what I was thinking about. I thought that was really cool. Anyway, there's the original shot, and here's the final shot. Again, I did the same thing with their headlamps. I brought in a lightning tool there and brightened them up and kind of made them look a little bit more otherworldly. For this shot, I actually dropped down the temperature down into the blue level. I just thought it looked cool, and this orange yellow here was kind of throwing me off anyway. So there's the original again. Here's the final. I thought it looked pretty cool. Again, this is pretty simple. Just a big light up behind my head. I had a grid on it, and I just shot a few frames like that. Just like the other shot, my aperture was 2.8. Shutter was at a 50th of a second. I just did that just to open up a little bit more light in the background, which this is of course just ambient light. And so I dragged my shutter down to 50th just to bring in some more of that light. But when you're shooting flash, 50th is plenty of speed to get a sharp shot. I would even shoot as low as 30th or 40th of a second, depending on what I'm looking at, to bring in some ambient light. Because once the flash hits these guys, the flash duration is very fast, and so you can drag the shutter and bring in some extra ambient light. So that's what I did here on both of these shots. For this one, I shot my 16 to 35 millimeter lens at 20 millimeters, just to try to catch as much of this as I could. I wanted to sort of show where they were in this whole frame. So again, there's the final, and I'll go back to the beginning. So this is what they ended up running in the magazine. This is the same basic setup as the very first shot, but he's taken off his coveralls and he's just sitting on the end of the blade. And the first one he was standing up kind of back here, but this is the same light setup as the first shot that I showed you. Octave bank up high and to the right, although I lowered it down quite a bit because he sat down. And then you can actually see where my rim light, which was just out of frame right over here. In fact, you can maybe see a little bit of the flare of it right here. That'll give you the directionality of it actually pretty well. It was shining right on the back of his head and his shoulder right here, and you can actually see where it's working in this shot. And the one where he's wearing the white coveralls, you really couldn't tell what it was doing, but here I think it works really well. It separates him from the background well. It makes him a little bit more three-dimensional. And so this is the shot they ended up running, but again, basically it's the same setup as the first one that I showed you. And I really did the same editing in Lightroom on this one. And so this was really cool. They sent me these every time I shoot a editorial. I asked them to send me a PDF of the final spread, just for my own kind of portfolio. And I ended up putting some of these published shots on my website, which includes the text and everything, just to show kind of how it ended up in the final layout. But anyway, that's my shoot that I did for Sierra Magazine with Lester Johnson. I think it turned out really cool. It was fun. Thanks for watching.